Well, good morning, and thank you, everyone. Chris, it's great to see you. It's wonderful to be here in Kyiv. We just heard the national anthems of Ukraine and the United States. The end of the American anthem it's really a story. Francis Scott Key, the author, wrote these words during the Battle of Baltimore. And what was happening there was a very difficult time for the United States. We were being attacked by the British, bombs flying all night. And the last words are to ask, as the dawn is breaking in the morning, is our flag still there? Did we succeed? Did we make it? And that's what Ukraine has been going through, that kind of attack. And Ukraine's flag is still there. We in that, because of that anthem, call ourselves the land of the free and the home of the brave. And Ukraine is also the land of the free and the home of the brave. Now, you were attacked by what people thought was the second most powerful military in the world. Turns out it's the second most powerful military in Ukraine. And I think Ukraine has shown that it is an inspiration, and Russia has shown that it's not much more than a deadly nuisance. People ask me, so what's the difference between Ukraine and a member of NATO? So you have to think about it. Well, one of them is a modern, well-integrated, fully trained, fully equipped, highly capable fighting force that is defending the frontiers of freedom. And the other is a member of NATO. Seriously, as a policy point, and I want to turn to a few of these now, we're here to talk about Ukraine's recovery and reconstruction. I think that there's one thing that we need to get right in our heads. There is a tendency, especially in the West, in Western capitals, and I've been to a lot of these Ukraine recovery conferences in Lugano and Berlin and so forth. There's a tendency to believe that Ukraine needs to have economic recovery when the war's over. We have to win the war and then we can rebuild. And I am trying everywhere I can to make the point, this is backwards, this is wrong. Ukraine needs to build while fighting. We have to have economic recovery as the pathway to victory, not a consequence of victory. And there are several things that need to happen to help make that happen. I've been arguing these. I'm going to the Swedish-hosted, EU-oriented economic recovery conference in June 8th. I'll be going to the one in London as well. But there are a couple things I think we should all be collectively arguing for. One of them, probably the most important, is that there needs to be a permanent executive. We have recovery conferences once a year. What happens in between? What happened since Lugano? What happened since Berlin? We need to have a permanent executive that is thinking every day, how do we mobilize economic recovery of Ukraine? I think together with that, we need to be embracing the private sector. And it's a cold shower. It's something that maybe isn't nice to hear, but it's a fact. There will never be enough public funding from the United States or the European Union to support Ukraine's economic recovery. The funds will come from investment. They will be building the country. And so it's critically important that we have the private sector fully involved from the beginning and giving advice to the governments as to what is needed in order for them to realize their investments. This is a critical piece as well. So there ought to be not only a permanent executive, but a permanent private sector advisory council for Ukrainian economic recovery. And then what is it today that keeps the private sector from investing more in Ukraine right now? It is concerns about security. Private investors want to know, if I make this investment, will it be safe? Can I realize my investment? And there are two things that need to happen. The first is an insurance mechanism to provide war risk insurance for companies. Companies can get private insurance, but for force majeure, for acts of war, they're often not covered. This is where public funding can step in. We ought to be able to provide insurance for private companies for acts of war. And what better source of a pool of money to be drawn upon as needed than Russian central bank reserves that are frozen in many of our countries right now? We should be using those as a pool to guarantee an insurance mechanism. And then the second thing is, okay, suppose I invest and my investment is safe right now and I get insurance if it's blown up. The second question is more of a macro question. Will Ukraine be there 5 years from now? How do I know this is all going to work? And this is where NATO is so critically important. I think that at the Vilnius summit coming up, we need to demand that NATO make a stronger signal than it has to date. NATO made a commitment in 2008 that Ukraine will be a member of NATO, but nothing has moved since then. This time around, we have to make it real, and we need to hear NATO say, we are beginning to operationalize our commitment that Ukraine will be a member of NATO and put in place several practical steps. It won't happen. NATO membership won't happen tomorrow or the day after the Vilnius summit. But we need to send a clear signal to the investors in Ukraine that this train has left the station and this is where we're going. Part of this, and the final point that I'll make, is that we need to be investing in the young people and the future of Ukraine. This country, throughout this conflict, has proven that it is smart, it is talented, it is resilient, it is innovative, and it will succeed. And we need to be investing those qualities, that determination, and everything we can into the young generation of Ukraine so they build an even stronger Ukraine for the future. That's why I am so pleased to be one of the founders of the American University in Kyiv. It's why I'm delighted that Dan Rice and Roman Sharameta and other partners are here. This is an investment in America's support for Ukraine and an American-Ukrainian partnership to help build the Ukraine of the future. As Chris said, the United States has been with Ukraine every step of the way through the conflict. We want to be with you every step of the way in the recovery and building the future of Ukraine as well. And finally, let me just say thank you so much to Vlad Scotts, Ukraine American House, and everyone who has put this together. This is a critical event. It is a first step. Vlad, we have to make this an annual event. We have to get CEOs from American companies here. We have to get private equity investors. We have to have the same on the Ukrainian side. And we need to build this into the most important American-Ukrainian forum every year. Thank you very much.